Hello and welcome to a mini webinar about managing financial anxiety, which I think is super important at the moment. Before I kind of get stuck in though, I do really want to point out that it's okay to not be okay. I think it's so important, especially with the whole cost of living and the aftermath of the pandemic. There's just constant stuff going on. So if you're not feeling amazing right now, then welcome to the club. And also, it's okay. All right. So I just really wanted to put that out there before we get kind of stuck in, really. So what I'm going to be covering in this session is what anxiety is, those kind of symptoms to look out for. Why do people get it? Which obviously with this particular session, we'll be focusing on the financial side of stuff and money stress. And then most importantly, we'll be looking at how to manage it with some really simple strategies that you can do yourself at home and you don't necessarily need to speak to someone about. So let's get stuck in. So what is anxiety? So first things first, everyone experiences it. Every single human being. And we will all have periods in our life where our anxiety might be quite heightened, it might be quite under control, it might go up and down, it might feel quite stable. And that's pretty normal, to be fair. What isn't normal, though, is if it's happening an overwhelming feeling all day, every day, and it's really affecting your life. Okay, and again, we'll be looking at some tips for that a bit later, but it's just to say that in general, if you're feeling it now and again, or you're feeling it right now, that's absolutely normal. So what is it? So it's where you feel excessive worry and unease, fear of what's going on. There's lots of different symptoms, and we'll look at those symptoms in a minute, where they are sometimes emotional in your head or to do with your body. It is the most common mental health issue there is out there, alongside with depression, and often some people will find that they have the two together. 10% of the population have an anxiety problem, disorder. So everyone experiences it in general, but 10% will actually have a specific problem related to it. So it might be that they have a phobia of something, or generalized anxiety disorder, or OCD, for example. There's loads of different types of anxieties, but in general, everyone will experience it, but 10% will actually have a real significant problem with it. So I hope that makes sense. So why do people get it? I'm not going to go through every single one of these, because I think we can all gather really from probably our own experiences and people we know. There's loads of different reasons why people get it. And I am obviously going to focus, for this webinar, I'm going to focus on the money side of things. So anything to do with cost of living. It could be that your job is not safe and you're worried about, you might not even be able to get a job because recruitment issues are big at the moment. You might be stressed because your partner's lost a job and you're now having to provide for the whole family. You might have to drive for your job and you can't afford all the petrol prices. You might be worried about the future stuff with energy bills, etc. So there's lots of stress around money at the moment. So let's look into those symptoms of what we might feel like if we have probably a bit too much anxiety. So there's two tables on this slide. We've got the top table, which is emotional, so stuff going on up here in our heads, and then physical, to do with our body. Okay, and that's really quite interesting about anxiety, is because we often think of mental health issues as related to just our brain, or just our mind, or the way we think. But what is super interesting is often a lot of mental health issues can manifest into our body, can have symptoms going on to do with our body. So let's have a look at both of these tables. So the first table then, which is your emotional, psychological stuff. In general, someone with anxiety is going to fear the worst. They're going to have a sense of dread. They're going to feel like a bit of a nervous wreck. They might feel that life is going really quick and fast paced, and they're really struggling to slow down. Often, and this is not an exhaustive list, by the way, but often when we can feel anxious, we can feel that everyone knows we are anxious. We feel like people are judging us. It's not always the case, but we can often feel that way. So it can feel very factual. Often, and this word negative, distorted thinking, which means distorted means it's not necessarily true. So we might be fearing or panicking about something that we think is going to happen, but it might not necessarily happen. It's our mind, if you like, getting carried away with ourselves, basically. So it's these distorted thinking, it means it's not always true, which is quite powerful, actually, because if we know that, then we can kind of have a word with our mind and be like, I don't know this is a fact, so I need to try and rationalize stuff in my head. Thoughts are often racing, and that's why it's really important to slow down. And if your thoughts are racing, then you can struggle to concentrate on stuff, and you might have like a brain fog as well, for example. So there's an example, there's probably lots more, but that's examples of emotional symptoms, okay, stuff going on up here. But what's interesting, if you look at down the bottom here, we've got those physical symptoms. You know, when you're anxious, you can get very hot. I know I definitely do. In fact, if I'm really anxious, if I'm really nervous and I've got to talk in front of loads of people, I get sweaty and I think, oh no, everyone's looking at me thinking, what's wrong with her? And then it makes me worse. But obviously, when you're nervous, it manifests in your physical body. So sweating, hot flushes, my heart races, you might have raised blood pressure, you might feel sick, you might feel dizzy, headaches, yeah, quite a lot really. Pins and needles, which is an interesting one. When we have pins and needles, obviously it might be a cut off of circulation. But in terms of anxiety, and I often have it when I'm really panicky, I often have it in my face, like pins and needles on my face. And I'm struggling to breathe. And so what happens is your body goes into fight or flight mode, basically, which is where it's like trying to protect you from harm. Because anxiety is a perceived threat, okay? So you are in like hypervision mode and you're thinking what's going to go on, and your blood just goes and rushes to the vital organs to protect them. So if there's not enough blood, you know, around the body because it's protecting your heart, for example, then you're not going to have as much blood maybe on your hands or on your face, and that's where you could get potential pins and needles. Quite an interesting fact that. Obviously, it could, not always, end up in a proper full-blown panic attack where you feel like, and it sounds an exaggeration, but it is true, you feel like you're having a heart attack, you feel like you're going to potentially die. You know, panic attacks are pretty awful, but they are the most extreme form of anxiety. So there's a nice example of symptoms there. You may resonate with some of them, all of them, none of them, okay, because it's just an example. You might resonate with more physical than emotional symptoms. There is no right or wrong symptom. We are all super, super different. I find that I have different symptoms for different anxieties. So work that one out. I can't work it out, but it doesn't matter, okay? So it's just a nice idea of what someone might be going through. So strategies, this is super, super important, probably the best part of the presentation, probably for, I think, what people are really interested in nowadays is thinking, well, you know what, I know I have anxiety, but what on earth can I do about it? So let's just go through some of these examples. So talking is the first one. So I'm just going to go to talk and distraction. I'll work my way around. So talking sounds really straightforward, doesn't it? But it often isn't. We often have sometimes in our English culture that, you know, that stiff upper lip thing where we shouldn't talk about stuff. And actually, when we think about money problems, it is much better to talk and prevent those problems, because once often you're in the debt and you're not talking about it and you're ignoring warning letters or rent arrears or whatever, it's really hard to get out of that. So it's super important that we try and have an open dialogue with, maybe friends or family. I know with a couple of my friends, we've started talking about like cheap ways to have fun. So, not going to maybe the pub and having beers, which will cost, a fortune, but trying to think of like going down the beach and having a barbecue instead of going out, so everyone brings a bit of food instead of going out for dinner. Like we're just trying to have an open dialogue and realizing that we need to think like that now. So distraction. So what I mean by distraction is when we are anxious, we often are preoccupied with quite a crazy mindset that's like telling us we're not going to be able to cope and everything's going to be a nightmare. Distraction is anything that you can do to get away from those thoughts. So it could be, again, everyone's different. It could be go in your garden and get clean and clean up your garden, do some cleaning around the house, put on some music, go for a run, whatever it is to distract you. Practicing self-care, which if you haven't heard of self-care before, it is literally just looking after yourself, basically. It is looking after yourself. If you can't look after yourself, then you're not going to deal with things very well. So this leads on to exercise and diet, and also sleep. If you're not eating properly, if you're not sleeping very well, if you're not getting active, you're not looking after yourself, which means that when shit hits the fan or things happen that you struggle with, you're not going to deal with it very well. So it's really, really important to just keep your tank fueled, okay? Keep yourself topped up. Because the more better you feel in yourself, the more that you will be able to deal with any curveballs that come your way. The nice practical tip for this, and I've done this many times when I've tried to save up for something, or I've been backpacking years ago, keep a spending diary, and that is literally everything. It's not like, looking at your bills and, looking at what you're doing with your shopping. It's writing down every single little thing. So it could be piece of chewing gum. It could be a £1 scratch card, whatever it is. Sometimes another good tip is to pay everything with cash, because it feels more real and you're less likely to part with it. Whereas on card, you're like tap, 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 tap. It's very easy nowadays and not to really think about what you're spending. Use the BCP to get the app and webpage. So if you haven't heard of this, this is an app that I've been working on sort of 2021, 2022. Launched it beginning in 2022. And it is a directory of organisations that can help with anything to do with well-being or work. So the well-being part has a really good money stress section, which will have webinars like this, but also will include a list of all the agencies of where to go if you want help. And that could be a one-off appointment. It could be, a regular appointment to sort out, say, rent arrears, debt problems, or options for debt. Sometimes we don't even know where to start. And these things could be quite scary when someone's going to speak to a professional. It doesn't have to be really like serious stuff. I've done it in the past where I've just seen someone as a one-off because I needed just that bit of advice to get going again, So if you need it, use it. There's so many things out there that are free as well. We need to make the most of that. And then the last tip really is about pausing and practice some thanks, some gratitude. So what I mean by that, and I do know my stuff when it comes to do with well-being, is we're not often grateful for things until they've gone away. So, were we grateful for, affordable living a few years ago? Probably not. It's not until things are taken away we're like, no, So who knows what else is around the corner? Sound too negative there, but what we need to do, and there's loads and loads of evidence to say if you practice this, you will deal with things better, your anxiety will be less, etc. Okay, it's a really good, easy tip, and it's free. The only thing you got to do is try and remember to do it. Okay, so every day, take a moment to pause, to breathe. Okay, you should be doing this a good few times a day in an ideal world. Take a moment to just check in on yourself. How are you doing? How is the heart rate? How are those anxiety symptoms doing? How's everyone else around you? What are you grateful for that day? Is it that you haven't had an argument with your kids that day, or they got up for school and you didn't have to like pretty much drag them out of bed? Or, is it the weather? Is it that you're grateful for your lovely kitchen that you get to do loads of baking in? I mean, I don't know. I'm just giving you some examples. So have a go at that every day if you can. And I promise if you do it every day, you will notice good things come your way and you'll notice it better. And if you can do that, then obviously in turn your financial anxiety will lessen. I'm not saying it'll go away, but it will definitely lessen. A lovely little infographic to look at. And this is all about control. Okay, so I've just got a couple more slides left of this presentation. So as human beings, we love to control stuff. Okay, it's in our nature. It makes us feel good. But we can't control a lot of things, but we can control some stuff. So my another bit of advice to you is to focus on what you can control as opposed to what you can't. So you can control, if you look in this little circle here, you can control your words, your thoughts, your actions. Okay, you can control that. So focus on that. If it's outside your control, it's only going to eat you up if it stresses you out. So try not to give too much attention to the actions of others or the actions of what's going on around the world or the actions of like the government, right? They're all things that you don't have control of, really, okay? So try and let it go as much as you can. Focus the attention on what you can control and you will lead a much more happier life, okay? Give it a go. Last slide then from me, and then we'll call it a wrap. So some more information then is some really good apps. So in this little green star here are 4 really good apps that you can download that help with well-being. Headspace, Insight Timer, Calm and Melt, all apps I really recommend. If you want advice about anything, literally anything, and you are based anywhere in England, okay, you could go and speak to someone at Citizens Advice. This is the Citizens Advice BCP webpage. They help with anything. They are impartial. They're not affiliated to anyone. They help with anything and for free and non-judgmental, okay? Don't know what we would do with that charity. They're amazing. And then if you are looking for all sorts of help and you're not quite sure what, the BCP Together webpage or app is that directory of information on where to go. So it could be that you're looking for advice on your child's mental health. There'll be information on there. It could be that you have just set up a business recently and you are worried because you're worried that it's not going to make you enough money. Or you could be, yeah, you've got your money stress section on there too. So check it out. That's it from me. Hopefully that's given you lots of beautiful information on where to go for any kind of guidance and a bit of help on dealing with financial anxiety.